Hello, Ellie here with my sidekick Davi, and a couple days ago I finished the third and final book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy, A Court of Wings and Ruin, otherwise known as ACOWAR, and today I'm going to talk about it. This is actually a really special video for me because tomorrow, which is Monday, May 15th, marks my 1 year anniversary on BookTube. Well, the 1 year anniversary of my first video, which happened to be A Court of Mist and Fury. So not only is this my 1 year, it is also the first time that I am talking about a second book coming out in a series from a book I already talked about on BookTube, and it happened to be my first one. So this is really exciting for me. I do also want to do another celebration of my first year, but we'll see if that actually happens. Anyway, let's get into the book. In case you don't know, A Court of Thorns and Roses is written by Sarah J. Maas. It is her second series, I guess, although her first finished series. It is amazing. I got my hands on an early copy of the first one thanks to my friend Flo, and I did a review on thefandom.net, which I will link below. I gave this one 5 stars. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling in a fantasy world with fae, and it's just amazing. In it, Feyre, who is the Belle character, actually can't read, which is interesting. She accidentally kills a fae thinking it's just a normal bear and is pulled into the fae world, which is across a big wall, as punishment, and she's basically kept prisoner, but things aren't quite as they seem, and it is definitely a Beauty and the Beast retelling. The second book is actually a different fairy tale retelling. The third one probably is too, but not one that I recognized in particular. But the second one is Persephone. This trilogy is one of my favorite things in existence at the moment. I have been dying for this last book to come out, and it finally did. I ranked all 3 of these books with 5 stars when I read them, so that's just a little taste of how amazing this series is. I don't think I can say much else about anything without at least giving away spoilers for the first one, so I'm just going to say that all 3 of these books are amazing, and if you have not picked up this book yet, pick it up. Oh, I will say, this is not the best book for younger readers. It is more new adult than young adult, which I typically don't read. There's a lot more explicit behavior than I'm used to in YA books, although there's been a lot more in YA recently too. There were scenes that were a little bit more than I'm used to and I'm particularly comfortable with. However, the plot of this story is absolutely amazing. So I personally wouldn't recommend it for somebody younger than 16 or 17, but once you hit that age, these stories are phenomenal, and I could not get enough of the characters, the story, everything. And it was announced that Sarah J. Maas is writing 3 more books set in this world, and when I get to the end of this, I'm going to give some predictions about what I think, or what I'm hoping, those 3 extra books may be based on spoilers from this last one. Anyway, if you have not read the first 2 books in this series, now is your time to go, so I can talk a little bit more about my thoughts on the third one. Still pretty much spoiler free, other than like what you would read on the back of the book. But yeah, if you haven't read the first 2, go away, go read it, and then come back, okay? Bye. Book 3, what happened was, it came out on May 2nd, and I didn't read it right away because there were 3 books coming out that day that I needed to read, and I was going to a Sarah J. Maas signing for this one, and I had to pre-order the book for it, and I was like, oh, I'll just wait until the signing. Well, no, that didn't happen. I ended up buying it on my Nook, which was at least a little bit less expensive, so I wasn't paying full price for it twice. And then my goal was to finish this by 6:30 on Thursday, which is when the signing was. And I was reading, didn't quite happen. I had about 50 pages left when I got to the signing, and I sat down and I read some of it while I was waiting for Sarah to start her speech, and then afterwards was I was number 195 in the signing, so I got to read for another hour or so while I was waiting for other people to get their books signed, and I actually finished this when my number was called and I was standing up there. That was actually kind of cool because I got to tell Sarah, like, guess what? I just finished your book sitting right up there. And I'm not going to say my reactions at the end because anything I say will be a spoiler. But anyway, in this book, as you know, at the end of the second one, Feyre was going back to the spring court, kind of undercover this time. I mean, she was herself, obviously, but she was pretending that she was out of the spell that Rhysand put her under. And now she wanted to be with Hamlin again, which, you know, was just not true. So this one starts with Feyre kind of being a double agent, I guess. She's kind of manipulating everything from the inside. Meanwhile, Rhysand and her other friends are trying to see what the next steps are and how they're going to move forward and fight Hybern, I think, when the time comes. And I think that's really all I can say without giving away spoilers. It was 5 stars. It wasn't quite what I was hoping for. The 5 stars is kind of rounded up, which I didn't feel with the first 2. So it's hard to say it was like the weakest book in the series because it was amazing and it was still worth 5 stars. But I don't know, I think it didn't have quite the closure I was hoping for. I think I'll explain it better in my spoiler section, but just know it wasn't like a gung-ho, strong, super 5 stars, but it was worth rounding up to 5 stars. Anyway, I'm giving my official spoiler warning. I'm going to get into spoilers in 1 second, so if you have not read this book yet, go read it and then come back, okay? Bye! I do have some notes from when I was reading this book, so I'm going to go through those and my overall thoughts. First of all, I was very impressed by how cunning Feyre was at the beginning of this book, which I feel like we hadn't seen from her that much in the past. I guess it was Rhysand kind of rubbing off on her a little bit. She was kicking ass and taking names, which was awesome. I was also reminded of how much I loved Lucien in the first one, because I remember reading the first one and saying that I actually like Lucien more than Hamlin, which in the second one you're like, oh, well, yeah, because Hamlin kind of sucks. But in the first one you were supposed to love Hamlin, but I loved Lucien, and now I was seeing why. And I was actually a little disappointed that Lucien kind of disappeared for a while there, but you could also feel he didn't quite fit in the Night Court. Not that he didn't at all, it was just different. I think because he still wasn't sure where his allegiance was, and that was a struggle for him. He wasn't sure where he stood with Elaine, or where he stood with Hamlin, or even Feyre. And obviously he was with Rhysand, who for years he had thought he was supposed to hate, so that was tough for him. The second Feyre gets back to Rhysand, you can already see the immediate difference in the way Hamlin and Rhys treat her, which you've seen in the other books, but having them right next to each other in this one just made it so much more obvious. You see, Hamlin, she knew she could manipulate him with jealousy because he didn't want anyone else touching her. And using Lucien, who there was clearly nothing between them, they were clearly just good friends. He was mates with her sister, like there was not ever going to have anything happen there. But the fact that Hamlin didn't want them alone together and saw her hugging him when she had been upset and was like, grr, angry eyes. But then she goes back, she's with Rhys, who is her actual mate, and he's like, sure, yeah, go train with my shirtless general, that's fine, that's what you should be doing right now. Like, oh, you're uncomfortable because of him and somebody else? Okay, let me have my other very attractive best friend come pick you up and train you one-on-one instead. That's fine too. Just completely different situation. I also want to talk about Elaine, who is spouting off this nonsense throughout the book. And a little before they realize it, I started to realize, like, wait a second, she seems a little clairvoyant. It took way too long for them to realize that she was a seer, because typically when they're spouting things about things that sound like they could really be happening, but you don't know what they're talking about, typically that's because it's something that you don't know about, but she does for some reason. But I guess, again, I'm reading this in a book where things aren't going to be mentioned that aren't important, and for them it's real life, and it's more likely that somebody's just crazy than a seer. But considering that everybody that's been made has had special powers, it would make sense there. Anyway, I have a note there. I was so scared for Cassian based on what Elaine said. When Elaine looked at Cassian and was like, they destroyed your wings. And he was like, yeah, well, it'll take more than that to kill me. And she's like, no, it won't. I was like, is this you telling us that Cassian's going to die? Because that sounds like Cassian's going to die, but he can't die. No, he can't, because he and Nesta haven't made their little thing official yet, and he can't die with that still up in the air. That's not possible. Speaking of which, I want to talk about Nesta. I'm still unclear what exactly happened with her. Like, I get that she stole a piece of the cauldron, which made her Death Fae or something. Is that right? I still don't quite understand that part. And then, now that the cauldron has been destroyed and put back together, I guess, is that piece of her gone? Or is she still connected to the cauldron? I'm guessing it's gone, but I'm not sure. Maybe we'll learn more about that at some point in the rest of the world. I want to talk about Moore's little reveal, which I have mixed feelings about. I like it in most cases. I just feel so bad for Azrael. That poor guy, he's been lusting after this girl for, what is it, 500 years? More than that? And she's just been tagging him along on purpose. It's one thing when she's like not fully understanding her own feelings, but the fact that she recognizes that she has no interest in being in a romantic relationship with him and is purposely not telling him that and purposely confusing him more is painful. And I get why she's doing what she's doing. Like, she's not ready to come out yet, which is fine. But her way of keeping him not interested is by sleeping with random guys. I know it'll hurt him, but can't she just say, like, I'll never be interested in you? Or, like, if she was willing to tell Feyre, who she's really close to, why can't she tell Azrael, who she's probably even closer to, because they've been friends forever? That's what I don't get. Like, I get the not being ready to come out, and she shouldn't have to come out if she's not ready to. But if she's ready to come out to Feyre, why not Azrael, who she has known and trusted forever? She trusts him with her life. Why not trust him with this as well if she's willing to trust Feyre? He's still being tugged along, and she's, even at the end of the book, she didn't tell him. He still doesn't know what's going on. He still thinks that there's hope when there's not. He got the short end of the stick. And honestly, so did Hamlin. I hate to say it because he was a jerk throughout the second one and in this one, but in the first book, he really did love Feyre, and he really was doing everything that he could to save her and take care of her. And he just got really messed up under the mountain. It turned him into an overprotective nut job. And in the end, it worked out because Feyre was able to find her mate and be much happier than she probably ever would have been with Hamlin, because the mate bonds just never would have set in and they would have been confused. But I hope he finds somebody. For a while in the second one, I was like, maybe he and Iantha will be a thing. But he got redemption, and Iantha got so far from redemption, it's ridiculous. So, kind of glad that she's dead. Oops, sorry. And I don't know, I'm hoping that Hamlin does eventually find happiness, because by the end of that book, between him saving her in his bear form when she was trying to get away from Hybern, and him just looking at her and saying, be happy, as he gave that last bit of himself to bring Rhys back, he redeemed himself. And I don't think that they're going to be best friends anytime soon, but I could see them being on okay terms moving forward. And I would like him to find somebody that he can be equal to the way Rhys was able to be equal to Feyre. And that was never going to be the way he saw Feyre, partly because he knew her before she was a Fae, when she was somewhat powerless within that world. That's how he was always going to see her. He just needs to find somebody that he can see as his equal and accept and maybe he'll make her a high lady too. About 75 pages from the end of this story, I remember I literally walked into my friend's classroom and I was like, I am terrified for my favorite character in this story, because the way things were working out, nobody was going to die that was still in this like uncertain territory with the people around them. So Nesta and Cassian were looking out like they were going to be fine because they still weren't officially together yet, and you need some happiness before you can die. As terrible as that sounds, like, being happy in a story that has to do with a war is a death sentence, because it's the people that are happy that become the most tragic. Typically, not always. Obviously not always, but a lot of the time. So I was like, all right, Cassian and Nesta need to work their stuff out before either one of them can die. So they're going to be fine because we're too close to the end for them to really work it out and have that happiness. Elaine and Lucien are going to be fine because same thing. They need to move forward and work out their stuff together, so they can't die either. Azriel and Moore, neither of them can die, although it would be even more tragic. If I was a little worried about Azriel because I was like, oh my god, what if he died, like, never knowing? And because she could still kind of have her happy ending without him, because he's not going to be her happy ending, and oh my gosh, that's terrible. That didn't happen though, so it's okay. So I was like, okay, so well, the only people that are in a place where they've had that happiness, they've had that time together, and could part ways in that typical war tragedy way, are Rhys and Feyre. Feyre's not gonna die, because I think this whole story is kind of about her being a kick-ass woman, so she can't die. But Rhys, he's given her his power, and he's like this awesome guy who has been saying that he's going to sacrifice himself, and I was so scared. But then, oh my gosh, there were a lot of like false bits. And I get, like, this is a war. Like, you have to both assume that you're going to make it and see everybody again, and assume that you won't in order to survive it. So when Cassian's walking away with Nesta, and Feyre's just like, he's going to come back, and Rhysand's just like, no, he won't. I was like, wait, what? No. Other than what Elaine said, that was the first time I thought Cassian might die, because I'm like, why would Rhysand say that unless it was true? So I was sitting at the Sarah J. Maas signing as I get to the part where Rhysand is dead. And my reaction was literally like, no, that's not real. No, you can't die like that. What? No. And then they had Tarkin look at him and say like, no, there's nothing I can do. And I'm just like, what? No. So I'm sitting there sobbing at this signing. Luckily, some of the people around me knew exactly why I was crying. And I turn around and talk to the people behind me. Once it was clear that he was about to come back and like my tears were able to stop, I turned around, I'm like, can you tell I was just crying because this, this book? And the younger girl behind me was like, I'm with you. No, you're fine. I'm like, okay, thank you. So then he came back, and I was fine. And then I finished the book, and then I told Sarah that if my makeup was messed up, it was her fault, because I had just been crying in the back of the room because of her book, and her husband laughed at me. There's a really nice picture I'll put up of me pointing to exactly where I was sitting up there crying, and her husband just laughing at me. It happens. Some last overall thoughts, and then I'm going to get into what I think about the other 3 books. So, one of the reasons I was a little bit disappointed is I'm a little bit of a masochist when it comes to my reading. In stories that are about war, I expect death. I just do. So, when there's a group of like 6, 7, 8 people, whatever, and not a single one of them dies in a war, it's a little unrealistic to me. I've said this complaint about other stories as well, where none of the main characters died, and I was like, kill somebody off. And I get it, like, I didn't want anyone to die. I like it when it's a very poetic death, when they have that happiness, which is why I was nervous that the only people that I thought could die in that way were Rhysand and Feyre. There's no one that I thought would have been a good death in this, but the fact that not only did Rhysand come back, but he even brought Amren back, I was like, really? I get it, but was that part necessary? Like, I didn't want her to die, obviously. I love her. I love everybody in this book. But, like, you're in a war. Not everybody's gonna make it out. I sound terrible, terrible, terrible saying that, and I'm not saying I want Amren dead. I'm not. I just like some sacrifice. Permanent sacrifice, not just, oh, we sacrificed ourselves, but it all worked out, yay! Because in real life, that's not the case. In real life, you sacrifice yourself, it's a sacrifice, and you gave your life for other people, which I don't know if I would be able to do, but you don't expect those people to come back. I think that was my main issue with this. Other than that, I absolutely loved it. That is often just a problem for me, when there's not the loss that I feel like there should be in a story that involves a war. I also felt like the Hybern part was a little bit anticlimactic, because they're leading up to this thing and you think there's going to be this huge, big blowout, and then he comes up and he just gets stabbed in the throat and that's it. And I love that it was Elaine that did it, and I love that he was facing Nesta at the time, because you were expecting it to be like this big Hybern and Rhysand standoff and manpower, testosterone, yeah! But then it was all of the girls that took over, and I love that Rhysand commented on that, saying, well, I couldn't let the girls take all the credit, but a little bit anticlimactic. At least they like had the additional part of the issue with the cauldron to add more to it, including that loss. I don't know, those are the main points I wanted to talk about. Feel free to message me if you want to talk about more specific things, because I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of things, and as soon as I turn off this camera, I'm going to be like, oh, I should have talked about this and this and this and this and that. But, I don't know. I love the story. I love these characters. I love everything about them. Last thing I want to talk about is my predictions for the other 3 books in this series. Based on things that Sarah said at my signing, and what we read, here are my predictions. So Sarah mentioned that the other stories will be based on other legends and myths. She specifically said something about an ice queen and a firebird. So here are my predictions. I'm predicting basically the Winter Queen, her, and Hellion. I want their story, so that one would be a prequel. We heard a little bit about their love story there. I want more of that. I want to see that romance. And I have a feeling that that's what it's going to be. Partly because of the reveal about Lucien, which was never discussed with Lucien. Does he know? Does he know who his father is? Do the siblings know who his father is? Who knows about this secret? Oh my gosh. Oh, Sarah J. Maas also said that those 3 stories are going to be connected, even though they might like be in completely separate times and everything. So, the first one will be about Hellion and Lucien's mom. Second will be about Lucien and Elaine. And I'm not sure about the order, like this one might come last, I don't really care. Well, I do care, but I don't know. That's not part of my prediction. But another one will be about Lucien and Elaine, because they're still not together yet. And obviously they need to be. So we're gonna see a whole story about them. And I'm really excited for that. In there, we're going to have the secret about Hellion being Lucien's father come out, and whether he knows about that, whether his brothers know about that, which I think at least the oldest one does, and it's going to be crazy. And then we'll also see what Hamlin is up to, and I hope that eventually he does find somebody that he can be equals with, because he was on like okay footing by the end of the book. He wasn't a terrible person, so he should be happy eventually. And the last one, this one I think is more hopeful, but I think it could happen. Mor and Tassa. Tassa was the queen with the spell on her, making her the Firebird. So that could be the Firebird story. And there was the whole thing, I think Mor had been in love with Tassa's like great-great-grandmother or something, which is a little creepy, but whatever. I think that would be really cute, and it would also, I kind of like the idea because in the story that Mor told, she fell in love with a mortal and decided not to pursue it, partly because she was mortal and a queen, and she needed an heir and all of that. So she like walked away and then regretted it. But by the time she wanted to go back and fight for her, the wall was up and she couldn't get back. And then by the time she found a way to get through, the queen was long gone. So I think it would be extremely poetic for Mor to fall in love with Tassa now, who's another mortal queen, and this time be willing to fight for her and work together to break the curse and be together and be happy. And in that, we can finally have that conversation with Azriel where he's no longer being strung along and maybe he can find somebody. And that would also be a good time to bring in the queens that are still around and kind of evil, who we know are gonna be a part of something at some point, because they can't just be left completely untouched. I'm really excited for these other stories whenever they come. I love Sarah J. Maas, I really do. I love these books, and I think that's it. Please feel free to leave me comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. If I forgot to talk about something and you want to know how I felt about a specific part, please ask. I will be happy to respond to any comments because I just want to gush about these books because I love them. And please give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at ReaderGonnaRead, just like my YouTube. And I will talk to you next time. Goodbye! I'm gonna have to redo my shelf. There's no space for it. Hey, Ellie and Dobby here. Like the video? Come subscribe. Do it right now. Click it.